Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory, prices, and delivery of cards to Magic Online players. My name is Evan Irwin, and we get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hi.
Ruben Bressler.
Hi, how are you?
Terrific. Absolutely terrific. Everybody, please go see the Spider-Man movie because it's fantastic.
Into the Spider-Verse.
God, it's fantastic.
I've heard that it's great.
So good. It's so good.
No love for Aquaman? No?
It ain't out yet.
Is it out yet?
Nope.
Yeah, I didn't think it was out
It's
yet.
been out it's been out in China or something for like 2 weeks now, but it's finally coming here.
Sure.
We also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 worst cards. Ruben?
Well, the best of the worst goes to Christian Davis, who commented on Facebook, I was waiting for this card to show up at number 1, but was severely disappointed. You know what's as bad as pyroclasming yourself with a Sorrow's Path? Casting a copy of One with Nothing and having your opponent let it resolve. Printed in one of the worst sets ever printed, Mr. Evan Irwin. This card is hands down the worst card in the worst set, and in my opinion, the worst card ever made. Want to set up graveyard shenanigans? Why not try Putrid Imp, Aaron Campbell? A common. A common is literally better than this card. That is how bad it is.
You know, I actually thought of including this card on my list, but the only saving grace was Magic Man Sam's video. He did a whole video about this card that has kind of redeemed it in my eyes. So I thought about it, and then I remembered Sam's video, and I gave it a watch, and I was like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's not as bad as we think.
It's $1.61 right now.
Wow.
Which is interesting, right? It's just scarcity. Clearly, no one's dying to play this thing. Even in their most madnessy of madness decks,
right?
They're like, good. I'm all right. I'm fine.
Probably, yeah.
It's funny because you can always tell a new Dredge player because they always stumble in the Dredge Discord and they're like, hi guys, I've been playing Dredge for 7 hours. Has anyone considered All or Nothing, One with Nothing? And we're like, oh, sweet summer child. And they always come in there and it's like, okay, honey, let's.
You adorable child. Wandering into the middle of a movie.
And they're like, but you discard your whole hand. For those who don't know, that is a rare from Savers of Kamigawa. One with Nothing is 1 black for an instant that says 3 words, discard your hand. That's how much it costs. They couldn't even make it cost nothing. They could just spend 0. This card is black.
It's called One with Nothing, so it either had to cost 1 or cost nothing.
Wow. It's a bad card though. In a admittedly bad set. Savers was kind of a hot.
But because of how bad it is, Christian, you get yourself some prize out of that.
Yeah, so thanks very much to CoolStuffInc.com for giving this $50 gift certificate to Christian Davis, who clearly threw it down for One with Nothing. Certainly a great option on the worst cards ever. But that means this week we get to move on to our top 10 blocks. Now, this is one of those very subjective, kind of can be whatever you want it to be. I can imagine some lists that have Urza Saga block on it because it's almost like a lesson, that we had to learn, like as Magic, that what happens. Or, some people could even have Ice Age for nostalgic reasons because that's when we started playing or something. I mean, it fits what you kind of want it to fit. That said, not a huge pool of blocks to choose from.
Yep. 25, was it?
Maybe
25. 25 technically have a block format. And we'll see if we want to finagle any of those numbers as we go forward. We'll see what you all chose.
Well, that said, there's a little bit of overlap. Quite a few hires this week. Some sames.
Yeah, a bit of overlap.
Yeah, which we'll get to, which is really interesting. But that means we get started here with number 10. And, even if you talk crap about something, it doesn't mean you can't love it. It doesn't mean you can't have wonderful thoughts thinking back. Part of being #on brand is to express my love for Kamigawa.
Right.
That's what I like. I love Kamigawa. I love Champions of Kamigawa block. Even if it's, God help us, the cock block, okay? COK. They chose that. That was on them. They could then CHK, they didn't. So if we had chalk block and not sock, but that would have been hilarious. It was soft. Anyway, we had Champions of Kamigawa. Okay, this is back when I came back to Magic. I'd left Magic after Exodus, and I finally came back. I sort of dipped my toe in the Mirrodin era or whatever, like before it came out that fall. But Champions was when I kind of just, I just dove right in. I started playing limited. I was playing really well. I was doing super well at events, and I don't really do well at events. So that was important. And I was like, oh man, this set's great. I love the flavor of it. The flavor was really cool. Those cards were really sweet. It was a fun format. Like I top 8'd my first limited PTQ I ever played with Champions, which was, felt amazing. So I think part of this is me. But part of it is like, I also want to return there with this modern sensibility, this modern thinking, this modern world building, where they can really take advantage of it. Because this was, this was the snapback from like, oh God, we went too far. Now we got to make the poopy block. And so they made everything cost like, infinite. Like there's multiple 12 mana creatures or whatever going on in that block, which is ridiculous. Instead, you take the flavor, which is the best part of the world period, and you kind of build on it. Like there should be a Japanese type themed world. It should exist. They've made one. Let's go back and fix it.
Yeah, I'm one of the people where I don't have the same dislike for Kamigawa that a lot of people do. I would love to go back because I wasn't there the first time around. I think that times have changed a little bit, and I think Maro's acknowledged this on his blog, that if he were to go back, there's a lot of things that you'd have to do very differently, and you have to do very carefully to make sure that you're not crossing the line from being an homage of something to just, you just have to do other cultures very, very carefully. But I think it can be done. I think with enough time and enough care and the right crew, I think it can be done. And I'd like to go back. I'm open to the idea. A lot of my favorite EDH cards come from the Kamigawa sets. And so I have there's a little kind of secret appreciation that I have for them.
I really like the set Champions of Kamigawa. Unfortunately, this is a blocks list. Champions suffers from the same fate that Theros does, in my opinion, in that the 3-set story is really nice, but sets 2 and 3 are kind of awful. Champions of Kamigawa as a set is amazing and fantastic and does something totally unique. It's such an on-theme set, but unfortunately it gets weighed down towards the end.
Yeah, it got really kind of gross, honestly, into this weird thing of like, maybe you shouldn't play your Magic cards. If you don't play your Magic cards, I'll give you a bonus. Would you like that? Right. Can you not play your Magic cards? Okay, thanks very much. It got weird. Anyway, Ruben, what's number 10?
My number 10 is on my list for a couple of reasons. I think that it's gotten a bad rap recently because of how bad Standard got. But I really think that there were some really admirable and interesting and fun things that happened in Kaladesh block.
Wow.
Kaladesh and Aether Revolt. First of all, whenever you introduce a new card type, you get some credit from me.
Right. Vehicles
there
are great.
Only a few sets that introduced brand new card types, and we got vehicles in Kaladesh. It's super awesome flavor. The whole Kaladesh and Aether Revolt flavor, and it tied together and made sense. High power level, obviously, super big, giant monsters crashing into each other with things like Smuggler's Copter and Aetherworks Marvel. Limited was great. And you created a whole new resource system in energy, not just vehicles, but a whole new resource system. It was just, I just have good memories of the set and good memories of the plane. All of the masterpieces were dope. And I think Kaladesh deserves some mention.
Yeah, Kaladesh just didn't, do it for me. I remember I was really disappointed by the storyline. I didn't really care where it just felt so, it kind of felt like an after school special where it was like, Tezzeret's at the science fair. Oh no. And it's like,
but she meets her mama. That's important.
Right. I was like, this is the dramatic tension. I just didn't care enough about what was happening. I didn't really care for Limited. I thought Crew was very annoying. I've voiced my frustrations with Crew before. I do like Vehicles though. I think Vehicles was a great takeaway. They introduced a couple even in Ixalan, which I thought was really clever. The ship. There's a couple ships there. The Galleon I thought was really cool.
Wait,
I would like to see
you don't like Crew, but you like the vehicles? It's like I like equipment, but I don't like the equipment costs.
No, I don't like the ruling behind Crew that you can have something with summoning sickness that can just sort of whoop and then crew it up. And it's like, come on, because it just feels like Cruiserweight's on. But I like vehicles as a card type. I think that's really cool. I do like the introduction of Pia Nalar, finally getting to meet her. I thought that was really cool. I really like the Liliana Chandra road trip. I thought was really cool for a little while. I just, like I said, I just had issues with the storyline. It just didn't really rope me, and that's my biggest weakness, I think, with Kaladesh. But
Kaladesh was broken. Kaladesh was just busted in half. Like, it's just
first time in many years
Marvel?
cards were powerful enough to get banned in standard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said about willing to take that level of risk of
Absolutely.
being able to print that kind of stuff. By the way, Eighth of Revolt had Fatal Push, which is one of the best removal spells of all time. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh, for sure. And it's just one of those, like, I appreciate them trying. I'm glad they tried it versus not trying it. But holy cow, it's broken. It's just, when energy is for everything, then it doesn't really matter. At that point, it becomes this ridiculous bonus.
Attune the ether.
How did Attune the Ether break magic? I don't understand, but it did, and it was sad, and Smuggler's Copter was just broken in half. I love how I always run into the stupid broken stuff. Like, I ran into Umazawa's Jitte at the pre-release, and I ran into Smuggler's Copter at the pre-release, and I was just like, this card is busted. This card is insane. It cruised for 1, which was just nuts. So it's a great block in terms of they went there, and then it's a bad block because they went there. Aaron, what's number 10?
My number 10 is also a more recent set. I really like the set because of the story. I thought there was a great callback to a character that we thought we'd kind of seen everything from, and we were able to really go back into that character's past and see just kind of how far-reaching and labyrinthine their plans really are. There was, dramatic tension that I really liked. I really liked a lot of the mechanics. There was a slight graveyard theme, which of course I'm completely here for. I liked that it was a reintroduction of an old mechanic. We got to see the return of cycling, which I'm a big fan of. They got to really lean on -1/-1 counters, which is something that we'd done before with like Infect and Wither, but it wasn't really either of those things. I thought that was really cool. My number 10 is Amonkhet block. I really like Amonkhet. I really like the way that it brought Nicol Bolas kind of back in, and the idea of him visiting this plane a really, really long time ago, kind of putting these 3 gods, almost like dolls, like just sort of putting them in this cabinet and being like, I'm going to come back for y'all later. Building a religion, as people kind of, the Planeswalkers kind of suspecting that something's not quite right here. We don't really know what. And then come to find out that Bolas is basically just using the plane as like a giant assembly line. And he's making these sort of, these blue hardened diamond kind of zombie warriors, which is awesome. We had the introduction of the gods, which were terrifying. The Scarab God obviously was a huge player in Standard. All of 3 of the gods see play in EDH. There were characters that we really cared about, like Hapatra, Hazaret turning into, again, one of the most popular gods, being the sole survivor, if you will. Liliana getting a chance to confront another one of her demons. I really just like so much about the set, and I thought it was for a good standard. I liked the storyline, and I enjoyed it a lot.
It was really neat. I enjoyed it. I felt like they did a fairly good job with a lot of the flavor in terms of the embalming stuff, or like the token thing they were doing, which was really nice. I think the exerting, you've given too much, so you got to give up an untapped step, was neat. Making some of the best cards with those mechanics, I mean, okay, sure. What was the, Glorybringer. That was...
And I have to say, it is responsible for one of my favorite standard decks I've played in a long time, Approach of the Second Sun. I was so sad to have to take that deck apart. I can't tell you. I had so much fun playing that deck.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it gave us, a giant Nicol Bolas, which was really cool, and some busted stuff. The Scarab God was just busted. Like, that card was way too good.
I remember that card got spoiled by Wedge. We were doing a live show on Wednesday, and I remember just freaking out, being like, how is this card real?
All these things it does, and it's only 5 mana, and oh my god.
Format defining card. Glorybringer was another format defining card. There were just cards that were quite good. Yeah,
and again, the flavor was cool. Like the brick counters and stuff like that was neat, which was fun.
And we still don't quite know what he's doing, what Bolas is doing with those zombies. We might find out very soon, but we never really got that cleared up. So
true.
We got that War on Ravnica or whatever coming set 3.
Undead Armory coming through.
Ding ding ding. Let's move on here to number 9. I don't have one because mine is higher. Ruben, what's your number 9?
So my number 9 is a bit of a throwback. I just liked Onslaught Block. I had a ton of fun playing Onslaught Block all the way through. even though Legions and Scourge were not the greatest second and third sets, it all sort of made sense together. I'm a big fan of Tribal, so being the first
Tribal,
being the first real Tribal block, having all the stuff for elves and goblins and zombies, that was a ton of fun. The return of Cycling, since its first appearance in Urza's block. Really interesting, fun throwback to that. There were a bunch of really iconic cards and characters. The story held together once again. Slivers making a comeback and being sort of the big plot twist that they had. And from a nostalgia point of view, I love that. I love that set.
And OG slivers, not these weird predator things they've been trying to force on us in recent.
Meat hooks slivers.
Yeah, give me muscle sliver. Give me all the old school crystalline sliver. That's what I want.
I mean, Onslaught featured, Kai Bude finally got his invitational card with this weird giant belt thing, which looks absolutely ridiculous.
Belt.
And the card was terrible. And they had these, basically, there's going to be winners and losers in formats, and they made the zombies and the goblins the winners, and the wizards were crap. And the white was Avon, I think. Was that the birds?
Yeah, birds.
Yeah, birds and that, and then they sucked.
And soldiers sometimes.
Soldiers sometimes, right? There was dragons sometimes.
Yeah.
Exalted Angel existed. That was really cool.
Right.
And slivers were really neat. Slivers have lasted, sort of stood the test of time. Sliver Overlord still remains, a $13 card or whatever, even if it's not very good.
Let's not forget one of the most indelible and most bizarre mechanics of all time, Morph, premiered in Onslaught as well.
Do you know what is, let me go back here and look, what is the the seventh most expensive card from either Onslaught, Scourge, or Legions? Only been printed once.
I don't know how I would ever know the answer to this question.
I'll even keep giving you some hints, okay? It was from Onslaught. It was a rare. It was a weird enchantment. And it was 2 red, 2 generic mana, an enchantment. What it says is, whenever a creature comes into play, you may add 1 generic mana to your mana pool for each creature you control that shares a type with it. This Mana Echoes, that's right. Mana Echoes. This is a $16 card.
Yep.
Wow.
Because it was only printed once, and there's just scarcity. So if they
when
reprinted
I was building my Locust God deck, it was suggested because if you're going to make Locusts, and you can make a bunch of mana, and then
so you can. And now back in the day, there was mana burn, so there was there was a mystery around this guy. No, now it's just total upside. And if they reprinted it, it would probably be like $1 or $2 or whatever, because it's only there once. You got a $16 rare there for you, which is fun. All right, Aaron, what's your number 9?
So number 9, I hated the limited format. It is the only pre-release I've ever walked out of. I was like, I am just not, this set is awful. It was the epitome of Voltron magic. I had just started to figure out how to build a pre-release deck. I'm not the strongest limited player. And so I had just come off of, I think it was like one of the core sets where I was doing pretty good. I learned how to build a deck. And then this set came along and changed everything. Mana curve, screw mana curve. You want 2 creatures, a bunch of auras, and call it a day. I hated the limited format, but I loved the standard format. We got the Return of Devotion, which was known as Chroma in other sets, which was really strange. Obviously, Mono Blue and Mono Black were format-defining decks. And there was also an Enchantress deck that was floating around. I love enchantment decks. I love Enchantress decks. I won my first ever game day with a green-white enchantment deck using Herald of the Pantheon and Silk Wrap. And Sigil of the Empty Throne, Starfield of Nyx, So anything with enchantments I'm a big fan of. I really enjoyed the standard. Whip of Erebos was obviously a card that I had a lot of fun with. And so my number 9 is Theros block. Theros block, Ruben had mentioned that there were 2 kind of weak sets towards the tail end there, which I don't deny, but I loved how recognizable a lot of the Greek or the Roman references were, that you could sort of point to things and you knew what a Trojan horse was. You knew what a Crowan horse was. You knew when you look at Nylea, that's sort of like the Athena type character, the Demeter character. I loved the recognizability. I love that it made enchantments matter, even if it went a little too far and limited. I love what it did for standard. Dramatic moments, we had the introduction of Ashiok, who everyone's clamoring to see more of. The death of Elsbeth, who you could very easily come back to. There have been hints of going back to Theros. I think it was Saheeli who had did like a random planeswalk and was like, oh, this is a thing. And so we very well could go back to Theros, and I'm very excited about that.
I mean, the idea was great. If Theros, I think, had been 2 sets, it would have been really, really terrific, because stretching like Born of the Gods was just, Born of the Gods was bad. And, otherwise it had some really cool ideas. The like, anticipation of what the black red god's going to do, that stuff, the color pair gods, that was super fun, super neat. I thought the enchantment creatures and stuff was super cool. I really enjoyed the idea, I think, of the block, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I didn't personally have a lot of fun playing the formats at the time. But I love a lot of these designs and a lot of the look of it and the feel of it. But stuff like, Stormbreath Dragon, just, that's sort of helped define your format course for a prefix.
It's still an old favorite. And Doomwake Giant. Oh my God, I'm never happier than when I'm wiping a board with Doomwake Giant. Just feels so good.
I thought that the flavor of Heroic and the flavor of Monstrosity were spectacularly good and well pulled off for what you wanted to evoke from those moments of using those abilities. I think that Theros and Kamigawa are very similar in that I would like to go back to both of those planes and see them done again, because I think that there's so much more to be explored in Theros.
Yeah, the idea, and also I appreciate that Theros is one of the very few sets where the Pro Tour broke it. Like, no one was playing mono blue, and then everybody's got Thassa's, and it's like, whoa, what happened? And they
Being
busted
in the house. That
Even
was
mono black.
That was Mono Black eventually broke it after the Pro Tour too. Yeah, people hadn't figured out Pack Rat yet. The Mono Black deck that made the top 8 of that Pro Tour had 2 Pack Rats in it. I was in the Team SCG house in the castle in Ireland for that Pro Tour, and I'm watching them. It was very surreal to see them playing, Frostburn Weirds in their deck, that all of them are playing at this
Cloudfin Raptor.
Cloudfin Raptor. Yeah, it was very. I've only been in the house twice where I was like, "What is happening with this Pro Tour?" That was one of the times when I was reporting on that, and then while I was living with Efro, and they stumbled upon the Ensoul Artifact deck with Whirler Rogues and stuff, and I was like, "Why are you testing like Keeper of the Lens and some random, look at all these Darksteel Citadels that are scattered around this place. What is happening?"
Wow.
And that's a unique moment, and it doesn't happen a lot.
It's true. All right, let's move on here to number 8. Ruben, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is maybe my favorite just feeling of what a set means and does and feels like. I love Lorwyn so much.
It's great.
Lorwyn, and I combined, so this block is Lorwyn, Morningtide, Shadowmoor, Eventide, the whole shebang. Sunrise, sunset, the whole picture is cool and interesting and unique. A world where there aren't humans, a world that is a fairy tale land with fairies and giants and elementals all interacting with each other. Just a really cool place. Oh, by the way, the introduction of planeswalkers, which you cannot understate how important that is in the evolution of modern Magic. The return of elves, the return of merfolk, really.
Yeah, I could tell that Thoughtseize story again if you want. That's a fun one.
And Thoughtseize, of course, being in the set. Cryptic Command, Sower of Temptation, and probably the best common ever printed, Muldrifter.
Muldrifter. Oh.
And it was just, I just love Lorwyn block.
Did you see that Morrow got tongues wagging recently when he made a comment on Blogatog about, I've been testing a lot of fairies lately, and people were like, and they were like, oh my God. And so, I mean, fairies just recently did well at a GP, in fact. Didn't it win the whole thing? Was it or close to it?
I am not getting those hopes up. I think he's probably talking about a commander deck or something. Like, I don't know.
I just like a set where the worst thing that happens is you get your pie stolen from your windowsill, right? You get your goat napped.
Get all straight goat nap. This is one of those sets. Well, first of all, I loved every minute of Lorwyn. Lorwyn was when I really kind of got sort of into the pro scene, and I got to really go to my first few pro tours beyond the one where I was at the Invitational. Like I, flew out to Hollywood, and Ken Nagel helped pay for my ticket. He's an R&D, still is an R&D, and it was terrific. And it's really kind of rubbed sort of elbows again with all of these pros and to see this stuff happen. But now, sort of looking back, the craziest stuff are the singles, the cards that they've not reprinted. The most expensive cards in the set are Greater, between all 4 sets, are Greater Oromancy, Bloom Tender, Bitter Blossom, Rings of Bright Hearth, by the way. That card's $36 because it needs to be. Mana Reflection, same way. Gilt Leaf Palace is $30. Like,
wow.
Just unnecessarily expensive. Because they're just weird and they're super hard to reprint. Enchanted Evening, same thing. It's a $25 card because it's hybrid mana and it's in this weird world, and where are you going to stick it? I don't know. But it was a super cool block. I loved it. Even though it was weird, I love the weird. I love the darkness, the weird flip side
this
stuff.
Is a really great way to. I wish that Kaladesh would have been more like this. I understand why they did what they did with Kaladesh. They wanted it to be sort of a palate cleanser because we were coming off of some very dark sets. We were coming off of, Battle for Zendikar,
Shadows of Innistrad.
All of that, and then straight into more, and people were just burned out. And so on the one hand, I understand why they did this sort of light, colorful science fair type storyline, but I feel like Lorwyn did a really good job of being kind of light, but still having tension and darkness and not going too far to the other extreme. Like I find the Lorwyn storyline fascinating. You hear the storyline of the Vidilian clique, how tragic that is. But yet you have the beauty of Una and you have the Aurora and things of that nature.
Kolthanor and
I think that's a great way to make a deep, kind of frightening storyline while still keeping it a little scary.
Yeah, and again, this for me is like I just really enjoy going back to these sets where, when I played, I had a million Manamorphoses just hanging out, in my boxes and binders and stuff because they were a common. Who cares? And
$15 now, $10,
$20 because it
I
was
have
not
more laying around. I'm not going to use
because it was not reprinted in Ultimate Masters.
I was getting commander cards.
there it went. So good luck with that. Well, look, there are. First of all, Lorwyn was my number 9, by the way. So we were close, as it were. But for this one, for this block, for my number 8, I did very well during this block as well. I was playing quite a bit in Limited. I made a top 8 of a PTQ, which was fun in Limited. Drafted a terrible deck and got daggered out of PT Yokohama because we were playing Shards of Alara Limited. And Shards of Alara created the Shards as we now know them, the Nyan, the Espers, and the Bants, and all that good stuff. And between, let's see, so there was Shards, there was Conflux, and there was Alara Reborn, were those 3 sets. And had a bunch of fun during all of those sets. They were great. We're able to see Noble Hierarch, and that was the time where I was going on the Magic cruises and stuff, and I could sit R&D down and be like, "What were you thinking, Mike Turian? Oh my God, have you seen Noble Hierarch? That card is unreasonably powerful." And he's just like, "Yeah, it's fun, right?" And I'm just like, "Yes, it's very fun. I love it, but I don't know why we're doing this." But yeah, we are, and but those really helped define the Shards. I like the colored artifact stuff was there. I like the Bant stuff was really fun. And Elspeth was super duper powerful, and no one had any idea at first, and that was great. Maelstrom Pulse, which was great. They didn't want to reprint Pernicious Deed, so they gave you this really awesome sorcery. They didn't really know what sort of planeswalkers were going on. Like Sarkhanval was the hot stuff, and it was like, well, no, wait, the 4-mana white one was the actual busted one. Because it's crazy, crazy good.
Yeah.
And so you look back and we're just like, wow, Send Triplets is a $26 card.
Wow.
Cascade made an appearance there. Sharum the Hegemon, who we all know and love. I love the fact that it gave these worlds this identity that people still use today. People still identify as being Jund players. Louis Scott Vargas named his daughter Naya, for God's sakes. Esper, that's a very popular name for cards. And I think that when you, and we'll certainly talk about this more with other sets, but when you, come up with a naming convention that becomes an identity that people cling to and decks cling to even well after the fact, I think you've kind of laid the groundwork for a really nice legacy for yourself. And I think that set really did that.
I mean, I was there at Pro Tour Honolulu, and this is where I think that was the first time I met Brad Nelson amongst, and I think also Conley Woods. And anyway, I was there when everyone was flipping out the morning of the Pro Tour. This is when you didn't have to submit your deck days ahead. The morning of the Pro Tour, people were scribbling out on their deck list and going to every vendor possible saying, "Dear God, please, do you have any Ural the Miststalkers?" That is the ultimate mirror breaker in the format because Cascade was everywhere. Bloodbraid Elf was just not a reasonable Magic card. And the only thing that ever kept Jace the Mind Sculptor in check for a little while. Because that was the block was very, very good and very, very exciting. That said, we'll move on here to Aaron. Which number 8?
My number 8 is widely considered to be just a bad set, very poorly received. Mark Rosewater has even gone on record and said that he made a ton of mistakes with the set, most notably that he put his own needs sort of before the players' needs. There were a lot of things that he had wanted to do with this set, and he pushed to do them at the expense of the players' enjoyment, that the players just weren't going to love it, but damn it, I want to do these things. I love any set where black is strong and red is weak, and particularly if it's a block where graveyard matters, I'm in. My number 8 is Odyssey Block. So Odyssey Block gave us a lot of toys: Flashback, Madness, Threshold, 3 of my favorite mechanics of all time. If you watched any sets where we've talked about mechanics, I love all 3 of those. There was also some criticism that the story didn't really match the Graveyard Matters theme, that, you know, you had all of these graveyard cards, but then you have this weird capitalist arena thing happening, and it's like, how does that really tie in together? Okay. But a lot of memorable cards. Psychotog came out in Odyssey Block. The Wishes that we know, Icarid, Mabay, and so great appreciation for this set, despite, you know, maybe being a bit of a blemish on the record of Magic. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, this is, I mean, all of those mechanics were just complex. I mean, you know, like knowing how many cards are in your graveyard at all times and that this thing is turned on, removing cards out of your graveyard to make that thing turn off and turn on again, which is the thing. Madness, like, I'm telling you, when I came back to Magic and they were trying to explain Madness to me, I was like... Shut up. What are you saying?
I leaned on Madness so hard. I mean, I remember when they did, I think it was Vintage Masters. The Vintage Masters, or just that cube. It was just Madness all the time. I was just forcing Madness and loving it. And I was so happy when they brought it back for Shadows over Innistrad. It just didn't, the cards just weren't very good, quite honestly. And I had really high hopes for Circular Logic. It's just one of my favorite cards of all time. And Basking Root Walla. And I was like, yes.
No, I hate the idea of a friggin' Madness Zone, which just makes no sense. It's still weird to me. It's still weird to me that you can put a thing in a Madness Zone, you can play a land, and you can still play that card from the Madness Zone.
I didn't think you could. I thought you had to do it when you...
I don't think so. I think before you play another spell, you have to do it. But because it's playing a land, and that's a special action that doesn't use the stack and blah, blah, blah.
Which card is this?
I could have sworn they updated the rules, because I seem to recall when I was playing the crazy red deck the other day and I was trying to do Fiery Temper stuff, I couldn't do Temper because I didn't already have a land out.
Right.
Okay, well, maybe they changed it, and I would not be surprised for what it's worth. But again, the Madness Zone and things from this weird zone get played from the zone. I live
in the zone. I'm Britney Spears. It's fine.
Cards that make new zones are interesting. I remember playing with Gathan Raiders and Fiery Temper in Time Spiral Block Constructed, where you had the Morph Zone and the Madness Zone at the same time. It was a complicated world we lived in.
I mean, and a few hits from those days. Cabal Coffers is an uncommon from Torment. $36.
That is the best $25 I ever spent. I remember I spent, because I tend to be more of a budget EDH player. I hemmed and hawed over that card for ages. It's like, I'm not paying $20 for a land. And then I don't remember what happened. I think I might have just had a good month where I had some extra money laying around. And I was like, fine, I'll pay the $20. Best $20 I ever spent. If you are paying a black EDH deck, pay the $20. You will be happy you did.
That's incredible. It's a $32 card right now. I can't with this uncommon. It's great. I mean, but others like Deserted Temple is $13 because it's the only time it's ever been printed, and it's a land that untaps a land, and that's just kind of a weird thing that's unique, isn't it? A bunch of these, like this is a good sort of test case for Time Stretch is like $15. But if they reprint it, it's probably going to go down to like 5 or 4 because whatever. But, you know, it's just they only printed them these 1 time. There's 2 times. Mirari's Wake, they keep printing that thing and it stays valuable every time, which is great. I love the sort of the staying power of a lot of these cards. I don't think they really killed it with the overall set design or even the metagame or how it's shaped out and constructed. But I think a lot of the really cool designs out of that block, have stood the test of time. Yeah. All right. So. Let's move on here to number 7. I don't have one, and neither does Ruben.
It's going to be a while till I have another thing to say.
It's going to be a minute.
About my own. Actually, I'll have lots to say about y'all's picks.
Right. Aaron, do you have number 7?
It's higher on someone else's list.
Oh, we missed a whole. Wow.
Big whiffs.
Whew. Monster whiffs. All right. Well, let's see here. For number 6, mine's also higher, as well as Ruben. Aaron?
I'll handle this. So when you were mentioning Kaladesh, Ruben, I feel the way about my number 6 as the way that you do about Kaladesh. I appreciate that they took risks. This was a block that was terrifying enough to drive people away from standard. It gave us some of the most broken artifacts we've ever seen: Chalice of the Void, Mindslaver, Chrome Mox, Goblin Charbelcher. Yes. Platinum Angel, Oblivion Stone. My number 6 is Mirrodin block. You have this really a bizarre storyline of the idea of Memnarch as a villain. Go try reading Memnarch's bio sometime. It's a ride. But you have this really wild storyline that introduces to the character of Glissa, who would ultimately become Glissa the Traitor. Really great storyline. I really like just the risks they took. I really like an artifact-flavored theme. Many popular EDH artifacts, many artifacts that have seen play in so many formats and have been defining cards. Chalice is now a 4 of in so many decks. Like, who knew? You have Mindslaver, which is a win con in mono blue Tron. You have all these cards like Chrome Mox, which is instrumental in the Storm decks. When you make cards that are so powerful enough that they, see play in multiple older formats going all the way back to vintage, I don't think you can deny that. And so between the power level, their freedom to take risks, the power level of these cards, and the wild storyline, I'm a big fan.
Mirrodin was amazing. Mirrodin was like, when I got back into Magic, I was like, my God, we are playing with some powerful freaking cards. The Skull Clamp Pro Tour was not won by Skull Clamp. It was won by Tooth and Nail, because Tooth and Nail was stupid. Tooth and Nail, even to this day, is a $15, $16 card because it's super powerful and super fun.
And Tooth and Nail is always one of those cards you scoff at. We have a young man in my F&M who plays Mono Green Stompy in Modern, and it's one of those decks where, like, if you've never played him before, it looks kind of janky. Like, you're looking at it, you're like, oh, this is adorable. He's playing with his leatherback Balos just to get his little green pips, like, you little thing. And all of a sudden he's like, Tooth and Nail? And I'm like, and then there's an Evercool. And you're like, oh, he's here to play. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you have, very much expensive due to scarcity, and Staff of Domination. That's a $32 rare.
Staff of Domination for sure.
Because they just only print it the one time. And you're just like, would you please? Because these cards are super expensive.
And this set is one of the reasons why this is a set that is sort of a cautionary tale when it comes to artifacts. They didn't really listen very well when Kaladesh came out, but this is a set that they definitely think of when they're thinking of artifacts, because there are so many cards in the set of them just kind of taking a little too far. And I think, like Ruben said, I would rather see Wizards taking risks than not taking any.
Oh, absolutely. And this was definitely a risk. I mean, every time we went to the artifact block, something busted in some fashion. Like, they accidentally the whole artifact block.
Okay.
And
And the other thing that Mirrodin did was it introduced the modern card frame.
Absolutely.
Man, Doubling Cube is $17.
Mm-hmm.
Been printed in 5th Dawn and 10th edition, and that was it. So, okay. Just a lot of these kind of fun, silly, goofy stuff that I have to look back on. Versus, it was just broken. I mean, you really... This is one of those,
Arcbound Ravager?
Oh, yeah, it was Ravager. And it was Disciple of the Vault. And Disciple of the Vault and Arcbound Ravager would just kill you.
Ravager and Vault and the artifact lands.
We're still having to deal with Ravager.
Yeah, woof. That card is ridiculous. And it was just unfun. And I was, trying to not play the best deck. And so I would just get run over every week. And every week it got smaller and smaller as people got more and more pissed off. It was kind of brutal in a way. But again, this is one of those, it teaches lessons. It shows you how powerful you can be in an Artifacts Matter block. It broke so much new ground with Platinum Angel and Mindslaver and stuff. That was awesome.
Right. And and equipment in general.
Oh, yeah.
Was terrific. And they made it too good with the swords. And then they kind of had to keep going with the swords. And then they're like, oh God, we broke it again. Because those swords were too good then and they were too good now. All right, moving on here to number 5. I actually have one. That's very exciting. Actually, and this is very much in the vein of Mirrodin. Sometimes you got to know where you're breaking things, right? Where is the breaking point? Where is the point when you go, man, maybe we shouldn't have made that. We're really sorry. Because Urza's block was broken. It was busted, stupidly, crazily. No one can understand what you're saying, busted when you tell people what those cards did, how much they cost, what they gave you, the tools they put into your hand, all together, the emergency bannings. There's the lore around it is great. The story is super interesting.
We don't call it emergency banning.
What's that?
We don't call it emergency banning. Remember the colorful word I used for that?
Yeah, retroactively adding my butt. If that's what you want to name that one, buddy, sure, whatever. But They broke things left and right and center, and you're like, why? Why is this here? Why does this work this way? And it's like, yeah, it's just because they didn't really know what they were going to do.
Flareon Academy, isn't that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Flareon Academy, Memory Jar.
That was the original.
Yeah, Gaia's Cradle, obviously super popular. I love Urza's block. I've many times said that Urza's Legacy is my favorite set, partially just because that's like the first set that I started collecting all of. The first foil I ever opened was when I bought my very first box, and my very first box was Urza's Legacy, and the very first pack I opened had a foil Grim Monolith in it.
It was a whole block of what, like, you know what sucks? Mana costs. Maybe we should just totally forget those stupid things. Because you just try to explain to somebody what Academy Rector did. Academy Rector would go find any enchantment. I don't care how much it cost, what colors it was, what it does. You get it for free out of your deck. Not even like out of the graveyard. Just go get it.
There was a fun standard deck at the time that had one Phyrexian Tower in it as its only black source. But it had a bunch of Academy Rectors to be able to go get one Yawgmoth's bargain.
I mean, this is sneak attack. This is show and tell. It is who cares about a mana cost? And then in the middle of it, here's Morphling. I mean, jeez.
I love that block because all of that block's Pro Tours were won by giants of the game. I mean, the top 4 Worlds was like Bob, John, Kai, and Zvi.
Wow.
Were like the top 4 of like every tournament in which those decks were legal.
Yeah.
One of the first editions of Duelist that I ever read was about an interesting play that Zvi had playing around the card Miscalculation with his Academy Mirror. Just a really interesting, fun set.
Yeah. I mean, but when you have Masticore, and Masticore is just clearly the best creature, not close in the format. And then comes along, Morphling to sort of be the other half over there of like the best control decks ever. I mean, it was just silly. I mean, and Replenish.
Fluctuator was broken.
How does Replenish even exist? That card is ridiculous. I mean, geez. So that's why I like Urza's block, is because you can sit around and go, what in the world were they thinking? We will never do anything close to this stupid ever again.
Introduced cycling. Just a whole bunch of innovations.
Oh, absolutely. Now, Ruben, you're still not with us
Correct.
yet.
Still taking a breather.
Still hanging out. Aaron, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is a newish set. One of the few sets where I love limited. I'm not a drafter. I'm not a sealed player, but damn it, I drafted a lot of this set and had fun drafting this set. Responsible for one of the better standard formats I've ever played in. Had huge implications for older formats with the reintroduction of Delve, Treasure Cruise, and Dig Through Time. Wreaked havoc on Modern, Legacy, Vintage, banned or restricted in all of those. It's one or the other. A lot of fun with the standard. We got introduced to Alesha, one of the first trans characters in canon, which was a huge deal. I have a great appreciation for this set because I was playing the Community Cup at the time, so I got the first peek at this set before anybody else. So great standard cards that we still talk about in Modern, Monastery Mentor anybody. Just huge impact on older formats. Great storyline. It gave us a new spin on Sarkhan, which made Sarkhan new and interesting again. We got to learn more about Ugin, which was really great. The idea of kind of playing with time. And who doesn't love dragons? Everybody. My number 5 is Khan's block. Just a huge hit. I played Sidisi Whip like it was going out of style. I drafted a bunch of this set. I think back on its impact on older formats. It had a huge impact. And I really, really like this set and what it stood for.
Yeah, I mean, one of the few pie bets I actually won against Brad Nelson, which was Dig Through Time is busted, and we'll see play. Turns out it saw a whole bunch.
I played Control in this standard, and for anyone who knows me, I am not a blue mage at all, but let me tell you, I sleeved up Esper Dragons, and I did well with it. I was 5-0 leagues like I was Shaheen Sarani. It was nuts. I loved Ojutai. I loved Ojutai so much. Foul Tongue Invocation was my life. I flipped a lot of Jaces back in that time. It was me playing Control. What?
They have not reprinted Ugin the Spirit Dragon. That is a $47 mythic as of right now, because they just won't give you another copy of it. But the whole block was super fun. This is our wedges, that we got to figure out who was
it adds to this lexicon as well.
I remember when this set came out, people were like, "We are never these names are dumb. Like, I'm not calling anything Jeskai. Are you serious?"
Who calls it Team or Delver?
Right, and we're calling it Mardu now. Mardu Pyromancer was a tier tier 1 deck in Modern. You know, again, these names that people scoffed at and were like, I'm never going to remember these. I'm never going to use these. Oh, no, we're still using them. We're still calling it Team
I remember as running SCG Live at the time, and it's like, no, that's now going to be, you know, Teamer Delver, that's Sultai Delver. And it was like, it's never going to be, it's always Bug Delver forever, never anything. You know, it doesn't matter because you just have to learn and appreciate, accept the lexicon and just move on because we have our identities now. And I think that's really cool. Yeah. And the identity for Sultai is that they're busted.
This was my number 7.
Nice. This was also my number 7.
Oh, there you go.
Ooh, we got higher samed.
Ooh-wee.
That's really fun. Okay, so, yeah, Khans of Tarkir was super neat.
Really interesting storyline. I just really like the storyline of it being like a time travel back to the future kind of block.
Right. The idea that, remember that you drafted with Khans and then Fate and then Dragons, that was neat. I thought that was super fun. Even if I don't think it worked that well, it was still very, very fun.
Right.
Which is great.
It was an interesting concept.
Yeah. Let's move on here to number 4. I have number 4. Yay! Ruben, this is your last hire. Is that correct?
Right. This is my second to last hire.
Oh boy. So many
hires. I do
hires.
have another hire, but I have a number 3 and I have a number 1.
We're moving here to number 4. My number 4 is a fun one. My number 4 is pretty sure this is the first pre-release that I took my camera and interviewed real live Magic players for this crazy new service called YouTube. And they were like, wow.
Tell us more, Grandpa.
Wow.
And I cranked the camera as the camera was cranked.
Right.
And I blew on the film as it came flying out, right? So I can keep it nice.
I was sprinkling silver dust on the daguerreotypes.
I'm just imagining Evan like the wizard when they pull the curtain back behind Wizard of Oz and he's like turning gray.
Stop! You know, it's great. No, because you can go back and watch this. I think it's the Magic Show number 4 because they made a set that was a love letter to Magic players at the time, particularly old school Magic players at the time, to try to kind of bring them back and be like, yo, it's time for Time Spiral and time to bring all of the cards that you like back. We're going to go and we're going to make them weird in Planar Chaos and give you Damnation, which just threw everybody for a loop, which was great. Time Spiral Ravnica was a fantastic format, which is great too. Future Sight is one of the weirdest, coolest. I loved it. It's not for me, and they're never going to make anything like that ever again. That was like off the wall weird Magic, and I loved every second of it. Yep. Time Spiral was great. The limited format was great. I mean, so many incredible cards came from those sets and that block. Like, it's amazing. I love Time.
My number 7 was Time Spiral block. Narcomoeba, Bridge from Below, Street Wraith. You know, we had Tarmogoyf, Pact of Negation, Summoner's Pact, the Mage's Cycle, the introduction of Delve for the first time, which we, you know, came back to in Cons. And yeah, just a fun set, a really great way to revisit prior characters. Braids is a blue mage. What? I really like that. I really like, you know, giving us characters that we maybe never hear from again. And we kind of saw that with Cons a little bit. You know, these are characters that, you know, might have been either wiped out in the first one and came back differently in the third. I think it's great to sort of revisit characters like that. Another one of those sets that I really wish I was around for, but as an older player playing older formats like Modern and Legacy, I'm really able to enjoy these cards that I missed.
This was my number 5. So I'm right there with you. I just loved everything about Time Spiral. Triple Time Spiral is one of my favorite formats. Future Sight is, to this day, the most exotic and weird and crazy set that's ever existed outside of the unsets, and maybe even including the unsets. Just every, you know, individual cards having one keyword. Like there's no card other than Lymph Sliver that has Absorb, right?
Yeah.
It introduced Delve on Tombstalker, for example.
Suspend was in that set, yeah? Suspend was in that block?
Suspend was Time Spiral block, yeah.
Again, baby.
Introducing Time Spiral.
I mean, the number 3, all right, so in the top 4 expensive cards of that block, you have Tarmogoyf, Horizon Canopy, Blank, and Damnation. What's Blank?
Magus the Moon.
Sliver Legion.
Oh!
Sliver Legion is a $44 rare from Future Sight.
That's right.
$44. Printed one time.
Because all sliver creatures get +1/+1.
That's
for
right.
Every other sliver.
Yeah, for each other sliver creature. So it gets like +1/+1 for every other sliver, and every other sliver gets, I mean, like, ridiculous. And of course, it's a 5-color craziness. And that's just one of those. They just need to reprint it. Just please reprint it. But where can you put slivers? You can't just print one sliver.
Yeah.
You got to go all slivers.
Right.
So, and they tried to do oops all slivers in, what was it, M13 or something? And they look like the Predator. God, it was a mess.
They could print like a Commander expansion probably with slivers.
And it would be an incredible seller. It's gotten like Sliver Legion's gotten to the point where it's difficult for Wizards to reprint it, because when they reprint it, it's going to be worth so much money. Even if it's worth half as much, that Commander deck's all of a sudden going to be the most expensive one above MSRP, blah, 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 because it's gotten too expensive. It's such a weird problem for any game company to have. Aaron, what's number 4?
My number 4 has given us a couple broken mechanics and at least 1 or 2 banned cards. Immediate impact on older formats, going all the way up to vintage. This was the return to a beloved block. You know, we got to see kind of the results of the war, and this was a set and a block where the bad guys ultimately won. And for a while there, they had kind of faked you out with the possibility of like, maybe you have a chance, and it's like, you have no chance. My number 4 is Scars block, Scars of Mirrodin block. In fact, Phyrexian mana. Batterskull, Karn Liberated, Karn Father, Elish Norn, woo! Deceiver Exarch, and Splinter Twin. This set was full of hits that you just look back at now, and I don't know what it is about Mirrodin sets, but you look at, you know, regular Mirrodin and you look at Scars, and they just can't help themselves. You know, Infect being an outrageous, thing that you're now, was a deck that needed to be held down in Modern. You look at Phyrexian Mana, which people still point to as an example of being just a broken mental misstep, as a card that vintage players are it's such a polarizing card in vintage right now. Cataxian Probe ended up having to be banned. What? You just look at it now. You look at mutagenic growth. You look at things of that nature. Elish Norn being an amazing reanimator target. In reanimator decks, I've reanimated so much myself. Batterskull, Batterskull being the reason that anytime someone talks about Stoneforge Mystic in Modern, you can't do that because Modern can't handle a turn 3 Batterskull. And so I really appreciate what they did with the storyline. We had characters like Izuri, we had characters like Malira, Thrun, the Praetors, Elish Norn, Shuldred, Jin Cataxius, and these sort of, these leaders of their colors and really neat ways to do Phyrexian. For a while there, Phyrexian was just sort of oil and darkness and black. And it's like, well, no, we had red Phyrexian, white Phyrexian, which I think white was kind of more terrifying than black.
It was. Elish Norn is an incredible character. It's a really
great spin on colors and identity that we already knew. And then
the flavor of greatness at any cost, of paying life to be able to gain access to things, was really, it was a hugely spiky mechanic and violated the rules of Magic, but was really kind of flavorful in a strange way.
And guess what? It was broken. They broke it. They broke the thing. Oh my God. Somehow I, of all people, got to preview Sword of Feast and Famine, the best card in Mirrodin Besieged. Thanks, Wizards. That card is.
It flew in the face of the color pie and in terms of mechanics, and I think that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, and you have, Skithrix, the Blight Dragon, that is really difficult to reprint. $22 card because they just don't know what to do with it.
22. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and every time a reprint set comes out and none of the big reprints are in there, they just all those boats just keep going up and up and up. Wow. Mirrodin Besieged again. This was and Scars of Mirrodin was great. Scars of Mirrodin, I was at Pro Tour Amsterdam and they had this party. There was a party in Japan, there was a party in Amsterdam, and they were revealing things on both sides of the world. I think we got Venser and they got Elspeth. Because they were revealing the Planeswalkers, so we got to see Venser the Sojourner. That was hot fire, and they had shots, all 5 colors with shots and stuff. And they had open bar. It was really neat. Little dancing going on, and me and Chapin getting the groove on. Perfect. That was a thing that happened. Yes, that was.
You want to go to the club with more than Patrick Chapin? That's for sure.
Boy, got some moves.
I'm not kidding.
If you go to the club with Chapin, you better bring bail money because you're gonna have a really good time.
I'm just saying that. Boy knows how to get down. So things like Wormcoil Engine, where you're just like, this is the most value-filled creature I have literally ever seen in my entire life playing Magic the Gathering.
Did you know that our friend Alexis Jansen is responsible for that card from start to finish, and she's so proud of that. She'll be like, you know what? I'm having a terrible day, but I made Wormcoil Engine. And I'm like, Alexis, please. What were you thinking?
and remember, back in the day, they would give you one for playing in the pre-release. This was the pre-release promo. They gave you the best card in the set for free. Like that was kind of crazy. Somebody at some point had to like smack him upside the head and be like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Getting him a Johnny Vengeance? What's wrong with y'all? Why are you giving him Emrakul? Jesus Christ, you're giving him like
Destiny and Emrakul. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was a wild time where they were like, we got to give away our best card for free, otherwise you won't show up at the pre-release. And it's like,
Right.
no, just give me a chance at it. And I'm still
Now
down.
it's like you get a dice that spins. Come on down.
Woo woo. Oh man, so those were fun days. My favorite last on this block was Wizards tried to pull this thing where they're like, I wonder what the third set's going to be. Is it going to be Mirrored and Pure, or is it going to be New Phyrexia? And it was like, you could tell they just slapped that Mirrored and Pure crap together on like an afternoon and like worked their butt off on New Phyrexia product images.
Yeah.
Big
Also,
crazy reveal.
The famous scandal of the God Book being leaked. That was something that was really big news at the time.
Oh yeah, I mean there was a day where a PDF came out with every single New Phyrexia card on it, like weeks before the spoilers were supposed to start. I think they might have they showed Phyrexian Obliterator. That's what they had shown so far because everyone was losing their mind because you didn't know that Dismember existed, and if a Dismember doesn't exist, that card is like format defining crazy. And once Dismember exists, you're like, oh, that's just whatever, you just dismember it. Well, we didn't know that. And as soon as the God Book came out, no one cared about Obliterator anymore. Those prices fell to nothing. And nowadays, Obliterator's kind of back. But back then, it was just kind of a big whiff once you knew that the ultimate answer was already in the set. So that was really neat. Let's see. Let's move on here to our top three. We have a unique situation with our top three. Sometimes me and Ruben are on the on that same level. And then sometimes me and Aaron are on that same level. And sometimes we go on the lock. We got the lock on 3 and 2 and 1. Yeah. Aaron and I share a number 3, a number 2, a number 1. We will both be talking about our favorite top 3 blocks here shortly. So, I mean, and Ruben, you and I had Konzatar here at number 7. Got that wavelength going. But that said, now you can talk, buddy. What is your number 3?
You can talk.
I'm hoping that you guys don't have a ton of hires on your list. I'm a little surprised that you guys don't have as much appreciation for Tempest, Stronghold, and Exodus as I do. I really liked Tempest Block. I started playing Magic a couple weeks after Exodus came out. Tempest, Stronghold, Exodus told a coherent story, introduced a lot of unique things that to this day we're still learning from. This episode has been a little bit of a love letter to Slivers, and of course Tempest Block introduced the Slivers for the very first time. A lot of cards that have stood the test of time, things like Capsize, Goblin Bombardment, obviously Scroll Rack was introduced to be able to get you that tax
Cursed
rack.
Scroll too, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Cursed Scroll too.
Cursed Scroll was in there. Wasteland. If you want to talk about long time impact, Wasteland was
Ancient Tomb.
That card.
And just a absolutely fun, interesting. They didn't sacrifice flavor. You had a whole bunch of shadow creatures. You had all of these slivers. You had this sort of feeling of hope, but also doom, and then all of these legendary players aboard the Skyship Weatherlight getting their own unique chances to shine and do their own thing. Just a really interesting, fun, cool set and block all the way through. And also introduced in Exodus, they introduced the black, silver, and gold rarity symbols. Can't overlook that at all. As we move forward in Modern Magic, just one of the most fun blocks.
Yeah, one of the storylines I felt the most invested in, I loved Cisse and Tongarth and Selenia and Krovax, and I still remember details like how Airtie, got corrupted, and Squee and Neri and Hannah's storyline, and that's probably the most attached I've ever been to characters in the Magic lore, and I think that's one of the reasons why, Dominaria was so successful. The callbacks, you have Shauna Cisse's legacy. The people that hear Cisse, they're like, oh, I'm in, I don't care what it is. And then you have Danitha Capuchin, Gerard, yes. I think that it was a big reason why was if those characters did not have the impact that they did, nobody would have cared. You could have put those Easter eggs in there, nobody would have cared. I think there's a reason why. I I like to say that I wasn't really playing. I was like 15 when that stuff came out. I had the cards, but I didn't really know what they did. And I can look back at them now at 35 and have a great appreciation for them. But more or less at the time, I was really just there for the story. These were characters I really, really cared about. And I would love to, anytime we get to go back, I think they might have given us a Miri recently, like a Commander set. And I was like, oh, like my Scooby ears went up. And so great appreciation for the characters, and any chance I have to revisit them, I'm completely on board with. No pun intended.
They made all the legends suck. That was the real problem.
That was the real problem. Is all the legends were kind of garbage, but
they're all bad. Like, part of Dominaria that worked in the ways it did was that they said, okay, these are going to be legends. We're going to make them uncommon. We're going to push the power level so they really felt powerful in the uncommon shell. And you're like, wow, that's really cool. Because back in the day, I too fell totally in love with the Weatherlight characters, and I wanted them to be awesome and interesting and neat. And they came out with Gerard, and I was like, get out of my face with that craziness, which was awful. Almost every card as they came out with them over that period of time, you were just like, why do you make them suck? Why do you make them suck? And Rosewater said, he's like, I wish we hadn't made them suck. And I'm like, well, yeah, because all the abilities were kind of weird and random and whatnot.
Also, quick point, Justice for Earthcraft.
This is one of the last sets, or at least the last blocks, where the stupid reserve list shows up and screws up everything, because Sliver Queen's a $60 card. City of Traders is $260.
Yeah, you've got like Alurin in there. You've got like Grindstone.
Humility. I mean, it's ridiculous. If anything, it's good that Ensnaring Bridge was seen as such a crappy card for such a very long time, or they would have put it on the reserve list. Yeah. That card was crap forever. And then
Sliver
finally,
Queen, I remember being a kid and Sliver Queen being the card that I had in like the hard case. And I remember like putting in a proxy in my Sliver Queen because I didn't want to get her. I was so proud of her. I remember the flavor text, her children are ever part of her. Ron Spencer, I believe, did that amazing art. And that was just one of those cards that I was so super proud of. Everybody else is like, here's my Jester's cap, here's my whatever. And I'm like, here's my Sliver Queen.
God, Falrat Stronghold is up to $54. Like, get out of here. Yeah. Like, these are just like silly prices to me, but like, I did love it. It's not that, for the reason I left Magic, it wasn't just because I was like, screw Magic, it's not good anymore. It's like, no, like real life kind of got in the way. My job kind of got in the way, and I couldn't go to events. And the whole reason I liked playing Magic was because I could make friends and have new friends and hang out with them and play Magic, and I couldn't do that anymore. So I was just like, well, I'm just going to sell out. I'll come back to it eventually. Who needs these Library of Alexandrias, right? Because I'm a smart person who makes good decisions and sold away all my crap when I shouldn't have. But that's Magic for you. Well, look, let me tell you about the inverse of this, okay? What if you made a set that you returned to a place and you hated it, and you were like, wow, this was stupid. Well, you took a huge opportunity and blew it. And you took everything that everyone liked about the first time you went there and you just flushed it down the drain, because who cares? It's all about these freaky weirdo alien people. Because Battle for Zendikar was a giant, just colossal screw up. Like, it was a horrible block. Oh my God, that limited format is trash. Like, actual just dumpster fire awful. Because if you go back to the original, to the OG, to one of the fastest formats. I'll never forget this. I first picked my first pick of this set. I opened a pack of Zendikar, and I picked a 7-drop. And that was the stupidest thing you could possibly do in that format. I mean, it's like the number one. You could not have picked a higher casting cost. I don't even think there was a higher casting cost card in that entire set. I picked the worst one because it's one of the fastest, blisteringly fast limited formats. People died on turn 4 and 5. It happened like crazy, crazy good. Landfall, one of the coolest, most incredible mechanics ever made. It blew my mind. And then the Zendikar treasures, people pulling Moxes and Lotuses and weird Legends cards out of these packs, trying to figure out who has the first run of them. There was something like 7 or 8 people at Wizards knew about the treasures, and that's it. Like, that's all. And that sounds, 8 people ever. No, I mean, like, think of a giant, a very large corporation with executive vice presidents and blah, blah, blah. And 8 people knew that existed, including someone who had to go to the factory and give them the cards to put in the freaking decks, to put in the packs themselves. And because it was technically, they could not do that legally, because it was another thing that was randomly inserted in the packs. And you have to say on the outside of the packs what your chance of getting certain types of cards in them is. Well, they didn't tell you that, so people lost their minds.
Yeah, Zendikar is one of those blocks that just created a feeling like no other. You had this feeling that you were like an adventurer, almost like Indiana Jones. You know, you had the traps, you had, the quest or the colony heart. You had the expeditions. There we go. You had, just all of these things. You had the introduction of the Eldrazi Splinter Twin, enemy fetches. Nissa being sort of an antagonist, if you will. Kind of being xenophobic and black green and that whole retcon thing. And I think it says something when a block is so beloved that when you go back to it, it fails. The shoes were too big. We've gone back to a couple sets. We've been back to Mirrodin and it was fine. We've gone back to Ravnica twice and it's fine. Went back to Innistrad and it's fine, but for whatever reason, this set was so loved. The stakes were so high and there's just, and if I'm being completely honest, and this might be an unpopular opinion or a hot take, I'm not convinced that any return to Zendikar was going to work because the set is so beloved and is so, I don't think anybody could have done it right. I'm just going to throw that out there. I think that you could have done like a cute set. I don't think it was ever going to live up to expectations. Just calling that right
I think that not trying to meet any of those expectations and being like, we're doing this other thing, because technically Rise of the Eldrazi is part of Zendikar block.
And I was going to say that is the impressive thing. This was my number 4, by the way. Zendikar, Worldwake, Rise of the Eldrazi as a block together.
Right.
I had a very high bar of my, the whole thing needs to be good. It can't just be a reflavored what is the best set of all the time.
Right.
We've done that already. I don't want to reflavor that and excuse Born of the Gods and excuse Champions of Kamigawa. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's not what I want to do with the list. And so Zendikar, Worldwake, and Rise of the Eldrazi all hit all the marks. Zendikar, as we were mentioning, is just a spectacularly good adventure set. Worldwake was one of the most busted and to this day remembered middle sets. For a variety of reasons. And then, of course, Rise of the Eldrazi by itself is a memorable experience that wasn't even drafted with the other 2 sets that introduced Emrakul and Splinter Twin and Wall of Omens. And, it introduced the Eldrazi to us.
I mean, remember that before Zendikar, we didn't have enemy fetches at all. Right. This is where they showed up for the first time. People, I'm seriously, lost their freaking mind. Bajillions of people, like, it's weird at the time, it was breaking all the records, and then we broke all the records again, and we broke all the records again, and 10 years later we're still breaking all the records. But I'm telling you, people lost their freaking minds for this
and
stuff.
There are people to this day that blame the fetch lands for formats being the way that they are. You look at Modern, you look at Legacy, and the ban the fetch lands arguments have come up more than once.
I mean, but for the record, Rise of the Eldrazi had an amazing limited format, one of my favorite draft formats of all time. It was really weird, and you drafted walls and 8-drops that were common, and it was strange, but I loved it, and it was great.
Level Up was a miss, but that's the only thing that was really a miss.
I liked Level Up. I was just about to say I liked Level Up. I thought Level Up was great.
It's a cool ability. It's just it was just a miss in execution.
It's just ugly. I think the problem, it's just ugly. If they could have made a better, more clear way of figuring out what level people were at or whatever, that would be great. But they didn't, and that's unfortunate. But like Zendikar, again, between Jace and all the coolness of Rise of the Eldrazi by itself, all being lumped together, but we needed the traps, we needed the Indiana Jones, and they just didn't give it to us when we went back, and that's crazy. All right, so that was our number 3. We'll move here to number 2. Ruben, do you have a number 2?
It is higher on both of your lists.
Oh boy!
Wow. All right then. Well, we do share a number 2.
We do.
And Aaron, this one I think holds a lot more for you than it does for me.
It really does. You talked about, you kind of taking a break from the game at a certain point. I think it was around Urza's Legacy.
It was around Exodus, yeah.
Exodus, there you go. I took my break around that time as well. And I remember being 16 years old and, saving up your babysitting money to pay the one kid who could drive to go to VGC. Shout out to our Milwaukee friends out there who remember VGC. And I don't even really say that I was playing the game at that point. You're 16, you have no money. You're looking around at grownups who can buy boxes. And that's the coolest thing in the world because you can even dream of getting to a point where you can buy boxes. Cut to my late 20s, early 30s. I haven't played Magic in 10 years or so. I'm playing World of Warcraft pretty firmly at that point. I'm literally tethered to my computer 3 days a week. I miss people. I miss getting out of the house. And so I decided to do a Google search and see if that game Magic is still around that I used to play when I was a teenager. Is that still a thing? I go to the mothership. I see Gavin Verhey has a column called Reconstructed or Deconstructed at the time. And Gavin Verhey has an entire deck built around a card called Splinter Fright. And I see Splinter Fright, and I see Boneyard Worm, and I immediately run to my local game store, and I buy a box of every set in this block because I'm 30 and I can, which is the best feeling in the world. But this is the set that got me back into Magic. This was a defining set for me. It really established my love of graveyard decks. This is what I want to be doing in life. Cards with just immediate eternal impact. Snapcaster, Liliana, Geist Satrap, Delver of Secrets. There's just nothing else like Innistrad.
I mean, to be there at the first modern event, the first modern Pro Tour, where it was literally broken in half. Like, they broke that format. It was filthy. It was filthy what they did to that format. But to be there and see Aaron Forsythe on coverage and saying, check out Snapcaster Mage. It's the last invitational card. Yep. Everyone was like losing. This thing originally pre-ordered for $6. I will never forget that. $5.99 was where that card started.
What is that now? Even with all the reprints?
Even with all the reprints, it is a $56 card.
Wow.
Yeah. So
rare, not mythic.
Not mythic. Absolutely. So it was
Burial Rites, Gothic horror. I mean, there are people who say this is the best set ever made. This
for sure.
has a huge following. The storyline was fantastic. We had characters like Soren and Olivia Voldaren, and just so many things it did right. So many callbacks. You look at the return of Avacyn and things of that nature. Transform, Huntmaster of the Fells. We'd never seen that before. Just a home run on every level. But for me, just a great personal appreciation in terms of adult Aaron kind of coming back to the game and looking at it through different eyes and just really knowing where I wanted to be.
We were a lot closer with our Zendikar pick. 3, 4, we were right in there. This was my number 6. Now let me defend myself a little bit. This is not the best sets of all time. It's the best blocks of all time. Avacyn Restored is real bad. All right, you bring the average way down with Avacyn.
Griselbrand, though.
You got a couple. The cool thing about Avacyn Restored was Griselbrand and the story. You closed the story.
Miracles were fun, and
it was good for coverage. It was like I think it was a big miss in terms of like kitchen table appeal.
I mean, Craterhoof Behemoth, Avacyn Angel of Hope, all that stuff.
And those,
was fun.
The 8-drops were great for kitchen table appeal. What I'm saying is that Avacyn Restored as a set, the draft environment was horrific.
Fair.
Soulbound was not that fun of an ability. It just wasn't that good. Dark Ascension, solid, like a good solid middle set. If we had gotten another Dark Ascension as the third set, we're probably good to go. Innistrad, obviously, top 2 sets of all time, top 3 sets of all time at the worst. I love Innistrad. I think that they went and did some risks in Innistrad, like Transform, that paid off in spades, and every single one was right. Yeah. Flashback came back. It was just such a great set, but you got to look at the whole picture. I love the story of the block. I love Innistrad as a set. It's my number 6.
I can't agree with that in terms of like what Innistrad did in terms of set design, world flavor, like the ability to take something that exists in the Gothic horror and really put in the flavor first. And even with Avacyn, with Craterhoof Behemoth, that was a huge constructed card. Avacyn Angel of Hope, which is an amazing casual card. Even things like Exquisite Blood and Tameo, like those are still expensive cards because you found that Griselbrand, obviously is huge. I don't know. It brings it down. You know what I mean? But it brings it down from like number 1. You know what I mean? Like that's to me what it brought down. It's like, it was still neat. I think that casual players really enjoyed Miracle because of the big swingy, like, oh my God, it's here. Not I sense a Divine Top, the Terminus or whatever for the millionth time. Like this to me was, it was neat. And even if anything else, the Avacyn Restored Pro Tour, I mean, it was pretty exciting to see the Miracles deck kind of go nuts.
Absolutely. Tons of fun.
And the moment with Kibler and the bonfire, I mean, unforgettable.
Right. I mean, that's Magic history right there, which is incredible. So it did create huge moments, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but the huge moments were certainly in there. All right. So let's move here to our numero uno, our number 1, Ruben's number 2. And I got to tell you, to me, this one was just like the snap first place. This set redefined a lot of what Magic could do. It's hard to describe.
Hearing you talk about it,
huh?
I'm getting chills just hearing you talk about it.
Oh man, and it's really difficult to kind of explain the sort of how players felt back in the day. Okay, look, what you had Mirrodin, which literally ruined constructed Magic. It ruined it. It took like 8 to 10 years to fix what Mirrodin screwed up. Like, it was bad in terms of event attendance and stuff. So there's that, right? Then you have Champions, which is underpowered. Saviors is a stupid hot mess, and no one's really excited about it. I think you limped into, 9th edition or something? 10th maybe at that point? And then finally, they came out with a world that just blew everyone's socks off. They just put up the one picture that one day, and they said, here is a temple garden. And you're like, hell's a temple garden? Mm-hmm. And they're like, wait, I could do the what? And it's got both of the card types. Like, guys, it's got both the card types. Oh my god, they got both the cards. There's a dual land. There's a real live dual land coming. And they had these 10 guilds, and they had these leaders, and they had these creatures, and they had these mechanics, and they had this entire block which split them up into different ways. And it told this story about this city world, which was amazing. It was so good. It's the most popular, not close. It's the one we've returned to twice and we don't care. It's the one they can even screw up with Dragon's Maze, and we'll all forgive it. Because they came back with another Ravnica. Ravnica, City of Guilds, the original 2005 block that me and my friends, we drove 8 hours to Richmond because we wanted to go to a Star City Games pre-release. They were the leaders in the industry, and by God, it was my 25th birthday. It was 2005, September 24th, because that's my 25th birthday. So I was there. It was amazing. There's so much this set in terms of nostalgia, in terms of power level at the time, in terms of the constructed formats were fantastic. The limited format was fantastic. Man, there's nothing about Ravnica I don't love. Dragon's Maze. But there's not much about Ravnica that I don't love.
Right. I mean, Ravnica, you know that when Ravnica is in Standard, Standard is awesome. I don't think it's a coincidence that people are loving Standard right now, and it's a Standard that a Ravnica block is in. You look at original Ravnica Standard, you look at Return to Ravnica Standard, these are the best Standard formats that I can recall. And more importantly, just talking about the identity. You know, we talked a little bit about it with cons and, you know, people adopting terms like Sultai, but no identity means as much to people as it does to say, I am Rakdos, I am Simic. I know people with tattoos. Tipa Mayan has the Simic symbol. You know, the concept of the t-shirts, you know, people, these terms mean so much more to people than just saying, I have a Sultai deck. No, people are, I am Golgari. There are people who are Orzhov. They breathe, they live, they feel personal attachments to these colors in a way that had never really been done before. And even when Ravnica's not around, these are still Dimir decks. You are still Dimir. There's a part of you. There's an identity there. Dredge, you know, Dredge was introduced in that block, which means a lot to me. Shocklands, obviously. You have cards like Doubling Season, Dark Confidant, this really epic storyline of an experimental crush, and the Simic being up to no good. And you have memorable characters like Feather that people still clamor for. You know, there are very few sets that get picked for D&D, as I'm sure Ruben can attest to. You know, you don't see Alara, you know, in D&D, you know, no one would care. But when you have a set like Ravnica, you know, I haven't paid too much attention to the D&D world, but the desire for the Ravnica books was off the charts. And I don't think that's an accident. I said it before that I'd be perfectly fine just never leaving Ravnica, honestly. And I don't think it's a, you know, eternal formats. You know, you look at the cards, and I think it says something about a set where every time it's around, the game is just better.
Yeah.
I mean,
obviously this was my number 2. And if you recall, when we did our top 10 best sets, none of the Ravnica sets were in my top 10. And you guys were like, how in the world is Ravnica City of Guilds not in your top 10? And it's like, well, as a block, as a full picture, it is spectacular. But it's not complete. And as a block, it is absolutely spectacular. It is so good flavor-wise that they crossed the streams to Dungeons and Dragons. It is so good as a world that they've returned to it twice now with different stories. They've created an entire new universe, and it's the most successful one they have, except for Dominaria, the one that they visit the most. And it is wholly unique in fantasy and wholly unique in Magic, and it's just a spectacularly fun, interesting place to go.
I mean, for me, there was a Grand Prix trial at one point that I got to play in. And there was that draft format was absolutely incredible. And it was great that you would set yourself up for pack 3. And I was like, I'm setting myself up for that, to try to get the Savage Twisters and later get some of the other really powerful cards. And that draft format changed dramatically as every set got released. And playing that was so much fun. I remember being in the room in India and Kentucky for the huge Guild Pack pre-release. Everybody was there and the cards were sweet and everyone was trying to figure out what were the best guilds were. At this point, there are coworkers at Cool Stuff that have Izzet tattoos right there on their on their wrist. Like they live that, they breathe that, they are these things. The worst thing about Ravnica is that they should have renamed the Green White Guild better. That's literally it. That's your fault. Okay, there's the fault in your star. You know what I'm saying?
What's wrong with Celestia?
It's just too many syllables.
It's a lot of syllables.
It should be 2 like the rest. Demir, or Gruul's just 1 or whatever. But Boros, that type of thing. But having 3 syllables kind of sucks. And you notice they fixed that for the wedges and the shards. Yeah. Golgari is also, it could probably be a little bit better,
Yeah.
But again, these are like, we're little nicks in the masterpiece of why couldn't you just do that there? No. The whole picture, the whole block is amazing. So, Ruben, what's your number 1?
So I'm going to forgive you guys because this was during your dead zones for both of you. You guys weren't playing during this time. Aaron, obviously you have a decade in there. Evan, I'm pretty sure that you weren't playing around this time. But I love Ravnica. I think Ravnica is spectacular. But you can't build a second story on a house with a shaky foundation. And Ravnica was a beautiful capstone on the top of the building that Invasion, Planeshift, Apocalypse built. Whole cloth Invasion, Planeshift, Apocalypse built. There were no misses in Invasion, Planeshift, Apocalypse at the time. Standard was great. Extended was great. The draft format, when every set was released, was great. Every keyword that they released was popular. The introduction of Kicker happened during Invasion.
Kicker was insane.
You have the most popular themes of all time being tribal, gold, and artifacts being really introduced in Invasion, Planeshift, and Apocalypse. We've seen artifacts before, but they were never really a theme. We'd seen gold cards before, but they were never really a theme. We'd seen tribal before, but it was never a theme. And add to that the fact that the story was so compelling that it was a continuation of the Weatherlight saga that we got to continue through. That the beginning and the middle led to the end of Apocalypse, which is the best third set, maybe tied with Rise of the Eldrazi of all time, with the introduction of enemy-colored cards. You have such a unique swath of powerful effects that came into being because of the Invasion block. Add to that the fact that you really felt like it was an invasion, and you really felt like it was an apocalypse because the Phyrexians were churning and doing their Phyrexian thing and coming for everybody. And moving forward, the events of Invasion impacted the rest of the multiverse in a way that I'm not sure we've seen since Invasion. The overlay on Dominaria, the impact on the Phyrexians and on Planeswalking from Invasion were massive. So that's my full-throated defense of Invasion. I love Ravnica. I think that there is a clear line of demarcation between Tempest and Ravnica, and I think it's close between Ravnica and Invasion. But I think that you gotta respect the roots of why Ravnica was so good. You need it. So how can we reflavor the multicolored things instead of it just being what it was before? Even though what it was before was so popular in Invasion, you need something to counteract off of.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot to be said for me in the Trailblazers. A lot of what Invasion did, or the Invasion block did, was care a lot about colors. It's not so much about the identity of your guilds or your 2 pairs or whatever. It was like, well, these colors and killing things about color.
If you have a red creature, do this. If you have a green creature, do this kind of thing.
Right, yeah. Exactly. If a blank is red, do Y or whatever, which was neat. But again, it also just kind of heralded in the idea that a multicolor theme is going to be blockbuster and gangbusters, because this thing sold like crazy and everyone loved it. And anyone who has played during this period, I've heard nothing nothing but like, effusive praise, lots of nostalgia, and how good it was and how fun it was back in the day. So there you go. That was our top 10 best blocks. You'll see them on the screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about, and we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com.
What block we didn't talk about.
What block? That is correct. Thank you. But before we go, I want to thank my co-hosts. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
I'm very pleased that I'm not on either of your block lists.
The night is young.
That's right. Be careful. Just saying. All right. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening, and hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Please follow, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at MagicMikesPodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at MagicMikesPodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.